like the first introduction hype music I've had in a long time. Thank you, Matt. I just really appreciate you, my friend. He's been such a good friend to me and to Desire Street for so long, so really appreciate it. As some of you know, I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia. So when I got the opportunity to come to Florida and talk to a group of people, I thought, man, that'd be great. I miss being around Florida and the Gators, and then we start driving in, and it's all this Seminole stuff. So I don't know. Hopefully we have a few Gators, though, right? You got some Gators here today? All right. Seminoles? Yeah. All right. This is a prayer breakfast. We will pray for you. Yeah, we moved to Atlanta several years ago, and a lot of my friends say, why would you move to Georgia? You know, they're going to give you a lot of trouble up there. They're going to heckle you and try to give you a bad time and some trouble. And I think about it and say, well, they never gave me any trouble when we were playing. We should all get along just fine up here with the Bulldogs. So it's been great. We've been there for about 10 years. It's been a great location. But I do love to come back to Florida. These are my roots. And clearly this is where I had the opportunity a long time ago now to play for the University of Florida and a really neat, iconic, successful coach named Steve Spurrier. And I'll never forget one of my first times as a young freshman quarterback. I was thrown in the game, probably because somebody else threw an interception. That's kind of how that would work. You got a few interceptions. Someone the other night said, did you know John Reeves at the University of Florida threw 9 interceptions in a game? It's like this record. I'm like, yeah, we'd have never done that with Spurrier because once you threw 2, you were out. So I was in, and we were running a corner route, and the way that he did it was so precise. They had to run the exact angle, and if you threw it on time, really you're throwing it before he breaks. It's really hard to defend, but he's got to run to the exact spot every time, and you've got to throw it there. So I took my steps. It looked like it was going to be open. I turned. I made the throw, which to me, I was in the right spot, and the receiver cut flat, in my opinion. So he was not where I thought he was supposed to be. So you can imagine he's running the route and the ball sails over his head. It's intercepted by the cover 2 safety. So now here's where the real business happens, is who's basically going to get the blame. You know, is it going to be the quarterback or the receiver? Because somebody's going to get an earful. And I was hoping he might recognize my position on this, that maybe it wasn't my fault. So anyway, I get to the sideline and I'm worried, and he walks out on the field and he says, Danny, that's all right. Don't worry about it, Danny. It's not your fault. I'm like, oh, he goes, it's my fault for putting you in the game. You're out. So that was my introduction to Steve Spurrier early at that point. But I tell you, it was an amazing 4 years looking back at it. Sometimes when you experience things in the moment, you don't necessarily recognize what's happening. But to win 4 SECs and a national championship, to be able to look back on that is amazing. It's been 22 years since my senior season, and 22 years, 15 years since I retired from football. But some of you may know that in the last 2 weeks, I have unretired from professional football-ish. So there is a new, side note, a new league that the NFL has partnered with that's a professional flag football league. And they're trying to get several former professionals to be involved, and Michael Vick's playing in this and several other folks. So I put together a team of former Gators, and I've got Ahmad Black and Major Wright and Chris Doring put on the old cleats, Travis McGriff. We got Chris Rainey, and so we're entering into this tournament over the next 3 months, and it's been a long time. I'm trying to wake the arm back up. So anyway, if you pay attention on social media, we'll see what we're doing, and also we're doing it as a fundraiser for Desire Street. So if you come back and get an autograph, you can pledge a little amount of money to Desire Street for every touchdown we score in this tournament. So anyway, I'm back out of retirement. Matt, how are you feeling? Can you run? He can throw. All right. Well, that's what I am. I can throw but can't run. We'll see how that goes. But it was phenomenal to play for Florida, for Steve Spurrier. And then, as some of you know, I was drafted by the Saints by Mike Ditka. So I go to New Orleans, and I'm really excited. You know, I went to Florida. They had never won a national championship, and we were able to do that. So, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this is going to be great. We've got Coach Ditka. we're going to get to this place and help bring the first Super Bowl to New Orleans, right? Not quite. Didn't happen that way. In fact, the highlight of my NFL career, unfortunately, was in one of my first starts. We were playing Carolina. It was at the end of the game. We were getting shut out. Like, we didn't, could you imagine at Florida getting shut out? I mean, like, it was really, really tough game. I was looking to my right, the receiver wasn't open, and it just so happened that as I spun to look to my next receiver, the defender that was over here, coming off the right edge, beat the tackle and was coming clean, just like a missile. Now there's a word for that. It's like unabated. Sometimes they stop the play, but not back then. So I was looking, and as I turned, it was the same moment that he dove forward like a missile. If you can picture the crown of his helmet impacting me right in my temple as I turned. So there was this huge collision, and we fell this way, and his body in the air spun, and he fell off somehow. So I stood back up, stumbled to my feet to look for a receiver, but I couldn't see anything. It was pitch black, and I remember like blinking my eyes or being startled and trying to look and still couldn't see anything. Someone else hit me. I got on the ground and I was getting up thinking, man, that's a scary moment in football. And I took a deep breath and started to get up and realized I still couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. What had happened was when this guy hit me, as his momentum carried him this way and as I spun this way, my helmet spun all the way around my head and was just on backwards. I didn't have a concussion. I wasn't blind. I was just sitting there looking for a receiver with my helmet backwards, which is funny now, but at the time I thought maybe I was blind. And I also remember laying on the ground, couldn't see anything, and I heard voices. So then I started wondering if maybe I had died. And then I thought, where's Jesus? Why don't I see him yet? One of our linemen said, well, sometimes when people think they're dying, they see a light. Did you see a light? I said, well, actually I did. It wasn't so much like one of those lights coming at you, though. It was moving sideways. He goes, that was just your ear hole as it passed your eyes. So there you have it. So I didn't go on to win Super Bowls. We went 6-10, 6-10, 3-13, and then we all got fired and went on from there. But the point of that story, I want to go back to the moment after this had happened when my helmet spun around and I first stood back up. So think about that for a minute. I'm still, the quarterback is in the pocket and I had the football trying to look downfield, okay? The receivers were still running their routes, hoping to make a cut and catch a pass. The linemen were all still blocking, except for one guy, I guess. So everything about that particular play still had the opportunity to be successful. Everything was happening. There just was one little thing that was off, was the guy with the ball couldn't see. I couldn't see what I needed to see correctly to make that play be successful. And I think that brings up what I think is one of the most significant themes of life is, what do you see? What do you notice? What are we paying attention to? Do we have eyes to see what really matters? And one of my favorite movie scenes of all the movies I've seen is from a movie in the 90s called Patch Adams. I don't know if you've seen that movie. It was with the late Robin Williams. He was a physician who made people laugh and through laughter helped to make them well. What a particular time in this movie, he was going through some struggles and he checked himself into a mental institution to get some help. And when he first walked in, this gray-haired man, this old gray-haired guy, scampered right up to him, and he put 4 fingers right in front of his face, and he said, "How many fingers do you see? How many?" And Patch looks around, he's like, 4? This guy goes, 4? You're crazy. You're all crazy. And he ran off. So Patch is like, oh my goodness, what type of place is this? And later there's another scene where he's in there and he sees this guy do that again to someone else. And he happened to be standing by a custodian. And he says, what's the deal with that guy? And the custodian says, well, that's Dr. Arthur Mendelson. He's one of the smartest minds of our time. So something at this moment began to shift in the mind of Patch. Something began, to use my words, to have him think, maybe there's more to see than I see. Maybe there's something I haven't noticed yet that I need to notice. Maybe there's more going on than that. And I think, personally, I'm going to stop for a second, because as I've gotten older, I think this is one of the most critical aspects of being human in the life of faith, is to have this humility, this beginner's mind, this sense that maybe there's something different here that I've missed. Maybe God's going to do something new or different. And what I've noticed in my life, especially when I start to have success, or when I get to be around people that have had success, we actually go the other way. We start thinking, oh, I know that. I've thought about that. I've considered that. This is my position on that. And I tell you what, we now live in a world where all our positions are so polarized and divided, we almost aren't capable of paying attention to something new or seeing something different. And I think that's one of the most critical things that we can have is, Lord, give me the opportunity to be open to what you might be doing new in my life. And perhaps even this morning, there may be something that God wants to do new in your life. Whether you've been going to church since you were a kid, or whether this may be one of the first times you've been in an environment where people are talking about faith like this. So Patch thinks about that. He goes and talks to the doctor. And this is such a cool scene where finally the doctor decides to help him out. And he said, put him up. How many do you see? He goes, I just see 4. He goes, Patch, you're looking at the wrong thing. You're looking at the fingers that are right in front of your face. Don't look at the fingers, Patch. Look past the fingers. Focus on my face, Patch. Now how many do you see? And if you saw the movie, or if you understand how vision works, when you look beyond something, you get what we call double vision. And in the movie, the camera did it, and all of a sudden you can see 8 fingers. And then the doctor said, Patch, everybody can see what's in front of them. Everybody can pay attention to the obvious things, what someone looks like, what someone might wear, how much money they might have. We can look and see problems, we can look and see things, but if you really want to see the answer, if you're looking for the deeper truth, you have to learn to see beyond what's right in front of you. And when I saw that, it reminded me of what now is probably my favorite passage in all of Scripture, where Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4:18, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Because what is seen is temporary, and what is unseen is eternal. And recognizing that we spend so much of our energy focusing on things that are here today and gone tomorrow, but we have to develop eyes to see beyond that. What's going to last? What matters? What is eternal in life? What is significant? And so often we spend most of our lives trying to be successful. And sometimes we get there at some level, however you define it. But I think there becomes a point where we all, if we're honest, start asking ourselves the question, what does it mean not to be successful, but to be significant? What does it mean to be significant? And so what I want to do for the next few minutes is just share 4 quick things that when I think of ways that God has shifted over my life, what I see, and how I see them a little different. They're very simple. You've heard them all before, but perhaps God may help us see them a little bit differently this morning. So the first one, we lived in New Orleans when Katrina hit. I was working with Desire Street, and we left the city like many. We thought we were coming back in 2 days. And I remember seeing the first footage, you probably remember it too, of those helicopters flying over and the floods and the parking lots and the stores. It was like a lot of other natural disasters that I had seen, except for that was the target by our house. And that was the street near where we lived. And then the next day we saw a picture of our neighbor's house. We couldn't see ours, but we saw our neighbor's, and the water was up to their roof. So we knew that in our 1-story house was sitting underwater, which it was, 8 feet of water for 3 weeks. And we began recognizing that we probably lost everything that we owned, everything that we had. But at the same time, we were wondering desperately what happened to all the families that we loved and cherished at Desire Street. Did they get out? Where were they? The mayor was saying tens of thousands of people perhaps had died, most of them in the 9th Ward. The phone services were out. We could not get in touch with people. Those that we could get in touch with couldn't get in touch with their loved ones. At the time, we did not know how many people may have died in the storm. And so it was very interesting because while I recognized we lost everything we had, I was still there with my wife and son, which in the end was everything I really needed. And I think it was this lesson, point number one, that we so easily lose sight of our wants and our needs in our country. We talk about it all the time with our children, but in many ways we're just a bunch of grown kids as well, running around wondering what do we need and what do we want. And I won't forget, the other image was driving back in about a month later. Anybody here go to New Orleans after the storm and volunteer, help gut or mud some houses? So if you recognize it, it's this big process where you go into a house, you take everything out and put it near the street. You knock out the walls if you can, the floors. You do everything you can in hopes that the structure of the house could survive to be reconstructed without having to tear everything down. But what ended up happening is now you have these huge piles of trash all over the street waiting for the city to eventually come pick it up. It was a very eerie feeling driving through the streets of New Orleans, realizing that a few weeks ago, all that trash was someone's treasure. And just like that, it was a pile of trash. It made me think, how much of my life am I investing in things that one day will be trash? And how much am I investing in something that will matter? You know, one day, I don't know when, hopefully years from now, there'll be people rummaging through an old pile of trash and they're going to kick something or trip on something that's pretty heavy. They're going to dig it out. It's going to look like this trophy over here. They're going to say, what is a Heisman trophy and who is Danny Wuerffel? Just one day, even that is going to end up being in a trash heap. I don't know when or how, but eventually. But what about my life is going to last beyond that? Number one, it's not about our money. And we live in a world where none of us would say that, but that's really the scorecard that we use in this stage of our life to kind of measure our success, especially as men and especially as businessmen. Number two, very, very much related. I have two boys. They're 14 and 11 now. I also have a 9-year-old daughter, thank God, that is our little princess, because these two boys are crazy. They love Legos. They play with Legos all the time. Not as much anymore, but you can imagine early on, every birthday, they're collecting Legos. So we have this room that became the Lego room, which if you have small kids, don't let the Lego room be on a hard surface floor, and don't ever walk barefoot. Just some advice. But you would think when the two boys would go into a room with 2,000 or 3,000 Lego pieces, there would be plenty of toys for two boys, right? You know, you're shaking your head because you know what happens. Eventually, they end up fighting over one piece. And it's usually like, oh, that one's yours. Oh, yeah, that one's yours. Oh, yeah, that one's mine. No, that one's mine. Mine. And it's like, you know, it's funny when they were 4 and 2 years old, and we kind of chuckle and think, all right, you go handle this, honey, or I'll go handle it. But as I got older, it's a little less amusing when they start fighting over one toy. But what about when they're 20 or 40-ish or 60? You know, we probably, you and I don't run around screaming, mine, about a toy, but the way that we spend our time, the way that we use our talents, and the way that we spend our money are usually focused on ourselves. And I think one of the most significant paradigm shifts in all of our lives is when we realize our lives are not about us. It's not about you, and it's not about me. There's a bigger picture going on. 1, it's not about our money. 2, it's not about us. 3, I was in New York a few years ago for the presentation of the Heisman Trophy, and a lot of former winners come back, so it also ends up being a very great place to get autographs. So there's a lot of autograph seekers. Unfortunately now, because people sell things, it becomes a way for people that want to get your autographs and sell it. So in the past, you'd at least avoid the kind of, scruffy-looking, kind of untrustworthy, greasy-haired guys. But if you saw a kid, but now what they do is they pay the kids to come get the autographs. So it's really hard to know. So there's a few tricks to the trade. Well, this kid came after me with the orange Gator mini helmet and followed me into the bathroom in this hotel in New York. So at least he waited by the door. That was polite. So as I was leaving, I got my Sharpie. And I said, who can I make this out to? Because if you put a name on it, then it's harder to sell. And he froze. So I got it. I need to put a name on this. And he just looked with that blank stare. So then I thought, all right, son, I didn't say this out loud probably because I have more ability to fake humility than this. But in my mind, I was thinking, you're not going to steal my image. I'm a Heisman Trophy winner. I'm not going to sign this for you. That's not how this goes. So I said, I'm not signing it if you don't tell me your name. And he said, I am really sorry, sir. I don't know who you are. I just saw you with Tim Tebow, and I was hoping you could take this and get Tim Tebow to sign it for me. What? Somebody said, did you do it? I said, heck no. I mean, maybe when I'm 50, I'll have enough maturity to do something like that. But at the time, I was deeply, deeply offended. Point number 3, we do all these things to try to be so important, to look important, to be respected, to be admired, to seem for ourselves and for others like we're a little bit better, like we stand out. And point number 3 is you're not that important. Everybody is beautiful and important and special in the eyes of God. I was actually flying from Atlanta to Jacksonville for a Tim Tebow's event. He's got a big foundation gala. This was a year or two ago, and I stopped in the airport to get my shoes shined in Atlanta. If you've ever done that or seen that, so I get up kind of on this chair, and there's this older guy. He's either down on a knee or he's sitting on a stool. And I was like, how long have you been here? He goes, I've been doing this for about 30 years. And what I said next was probably a combination of my own ego need, trying to get some affirmation, combined with the fact that a lot of people find it's interesting to get a chance to visit with someone who's won the Heisman. So somewhere between those motives of being kind and arrogant, I said, well, in doing this, have you ever met any celebrities? And you just got to picture this. This guy, he's down on his knee. Whoops. He stopped. It was one of those awkward pauses, like, is he okay? Did he hear me? And then he looked up. He said, son, in my world, there are no celebrities. And anybody who's up on a pedestal, it's just because they put themselves there. And it really doesn't matter to me. And then he went back down. Bam! You talk about a conviction that if there was a Hall of Famer in that moment, it wasn't me. It was this guy who saw things the way they were. It's not about what you've done or haven't done. It's about that we're created in the image of God. No matter what your bank account or where you're from or the color of your skin or anything, we all are created in the image of God and bear his image and have value and dignity. And we have to fight for that across the board because there's a lot of people that say that out loud but don't really believe that. So it's not about money. It's not about you. You're not that important. Sorry. And number 4, you cannot do this alone. So in trivia question, 1995, where did the Gators play Georgia? Anybody? Jacksonville, no. Anybody? Athens, that's right. So they were redoing the Jacksonville Stadium. So 94, we played it in Gainesville. In 95, we played it up there between the bushes or whatever they call it. And we were going out, and it was warm-up. And I was warming up. And if you're an athlete, or maybe if you're a musician or whatever craft you are, there's certain fields where sometimes you're feeling it and it's just happening and you're like kind of in the zone. But then there's other times where you're not feeling it. And then you can start thinking it, and sometimes you overthink it and it gets worse. Well, that was one of those times. I was warming up and I just was not throwing well. And I couldn't figure it out, like what was going on. And so I started thinking about, what did Coach Spurrier teach me? Get the ball back and rotate your shoulders and pronate your hand and all the tips. But it's like the more I did it, the worse it got. I thought, what did my high school coach teach me? And then that wasn't working. I thought, what did my mom, like when I was in third grade throwing with mom, what did she say? And none of this worked. And then, Coach Spurrier is watching, and so in his sort of very pastoral, encouraging demeanor said, Danny, what's wrong with you? So that really wasn't all that helpful. So all of a sudden, warm-ups ended. I go into the locker room, and I'm really nervous. This huge game. So I got on my knees. And I said, God, I have tried every way I know how to throw this football. It is not working. I can't do it. I really thought I could do this. I thought I was good at this. But this is not working. I need your help. Please, God, help me today. And whatever happens will be for your glory because I know I can't do this on my own. So we go out, we hand the ball off, a couple of short passes. We get to the 15. I'm going back looking at a flood route. A guy breaks through, and instead of kind of doing the right thing, I flash saw one of our receivers running the post who wasn't even eligible. He was clearing out that side of the field. But I panicked and just threw it at him. And then I saw this Georgia defender right in front of him. I got hit. I got up thinking, oh my goodness, it's going to be intercepted. Do I need to make the tackle? And then what's Spurrier going to say? I got up, and Ike Hilliard was standing in the end zone with the ball for a touchdown. I had no idea what had happened. A few series later, I was back to pass, and a guy breaks free, so I took off running to my right. As I'm running, I'm scanning the field. He's gaining on me, which is usually how that happened. And right before he hit me, I realized, as a smart quarterback, yep, that's right, Coach Spurrier used to say, Danny Wuerffel, he's not that talented, but he's highly coachable. I don't know what that means exactly. So I was being coachable. So what do you do if you're going to get sacked? You throw the ball away. In 1995 in college football, the safest play to do that was out the back of the end zone. There wasn't the pocket rule, so, I knew my stuff. I was coachable. And as I got there, I went to throw it, 10, 12, 14 rows up to my mom or whoever was up there, except the guy hit me before I let go of the ball. So instead of throwing it up there, as I fell, I spun and threw this low pass right back into the middle of the end zone into a sea of red defenders, which is like the worst thing you can do as a quarterback. Never throw back across your body over the middle of the field. So now I knew I was getting up to make a tackle, and I really assumed I was going to be going to the sideline. And when I got up, Chris Doring, who hopefully will catch some touchdowns in this flag football tournament, he is in the end zone with the ball for a touchdown. I didn't even know he was in on the play. So I'm as confused as anybody. I go to the sideline trying to make sense, and Spurrier meets me on the field, which again is usually not good, but in this case he's just so happy. He's like, Danny, because that was amazing. You made this perfect pass right over all the outstretched arms of the defenders to Chris Doring. But here's the point. You were running this way. He had started going that way. How did you see him? And it was one of those moments where you muster up all the integrity you have, or you do what I did. And I said, Coach, you just have to have peripheral vision. That's what you taught me. You got to see the field, Coach. And so anyway, went on through that touchdown, through a few more touchdowns, and ended up, listen to this, being the best game I ever played at any level of football. Youth, middle school, high school, college, certainly the NFL. It ended up being the greatest game that I ever played. So as we're sort of wrapping up this morning, I would say that the reason I share that story is not because I was in need and I said this prayer and God came through. That happens sometimes. He always comes through. Sometimes he comes through in the way that we want, like that. But there's other times it doesn't happen like that. There was the next year I prayed that similar prayer before Georgia, and we only scored 47 points. We didn't get to 50. So it doesn't always happen exactly how you want. I love saying that in Georgia. The people really, really, really like that. But we all know that, right? We know that God's not a genie. If you've had any history in your life of praying and going through adversity, you may, along with me and others, have some moments where there's some bitterness because you really needed something, or someone you loved really needed something, and it seemed like God didn't come through. So I don't tell the story to think that God's a genie that's there. I tell it because of this. Like I did before that game, getting on my knees, realizing I can't do it. I believe with all my heart that life is just like that. We start off trying to live it, or in my case, make those throws, and our strength and our abilities, and sometimes we do well, we have success. But inevitably, and if we're lucky, I believe life will take us to a point where we have to get on our knees and we say, I cannot do this on my own. God, I need you to come into my life, come into my heart. I am reaching out for you, Christ Jesus, because I need you in my life. I need the forgiveness of my sins. I need your presence. I cannot do this on my own. We begin that journey, living life with faith with Christ. And I think it's something we can not just do one time when we're 7 or when we're 10, but every day we can recognize the fact that, Lord, I cannot do this on my own. You may be in that spot today, whether it's the first time or the 700,000th time. But if we're wise and we're humble, we'll realize that the things that really matter, to see the things we need to see, to recognize it's not about money, it's not about us, and we're not that important, those are hard things to really internalize. I need the grace of God, the Holy Spirit, to help us move forward. And, side note, Chris Doring was running a flat route to the left. When he saw me running to the right, he did what he was coached to do. He turned around, he found the best lane he could find, which was in the back, and he ran towards me. So even though I had no idea what he was doing, he was being a great teammate for me in that moment. And it would have never happened without him. We got to get on our knees before God, but you also need good teammates in life. You need some good folks. And one of the things I love about this breakfast that I've heard is it's not just come here and hear a story and be challenged about your faith, but there's a way to follow up, that if you want to learn more, to think more, to get plugged into a church or different areas, that there's a way to develop some really good teammates for this journey of life and faith. Really appreciate this moment. Thank you guys for hosting me. Again, I will be shortly moving to the back over here. If you want to get a picture or an autograph, I'd be happy to do that. And we happen to have some pledge cards for the touchdowns. So if you want to come pledge a certain amount of money for every touchdown we score in this flag football tournament, you can help us, help kids all over the Southeast United States, and cheer for some football. So thank you so much. Dan's going to come up and close us up, but I just want to say thank you. God bless. And our team is the Gators United. So God bless, go Gators, and go Gators United. Thank you.